Hello and welcome back to Season 7 of the MRX Lab podcast, the show from FlexMR, where this year we're on a mission to bring you stories, tips and tricks to help you put customer salience at the heart of your business. To help me do that, I'm thrilled to be joined today by Ellie Osborne of Customer Insight at Saga. Welcome to the show, Ellie. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
If we could start, let's kick off with a question about customer centricity. What does customer centricity mean to you, and is it important?
Okay, so what does customer centricity mean to me? I think it means a number of different things, first off. But for me, and in my role at Saga, being client side, it's really ensuring that there's an understanding of customers within the business. And that when we come to make business decisions, be it the small ones to some of the very big ones, that we have those customers in mind and we're thinking of the customers. I think there's a lot of talk about customer centricity, and it is quite a big buzzword, and lots of businesses like to say that they are customer centric, but I think sometimes the reality can be different. It needs to be more than just simply having like a tracker in place. We've got a panel that we talk to every now and then, but actually really embedding it within the business, I think is key, and that's what it means to me. I want people internally, when they think of who are our customers, people immediately come to mind. I can remember so-and-so. I can think of so-and-so. I've heard about so-and-so. And that's where I think it really makes a difference. And I do think it's really important. I think it's essential for any business, be it the one-man band down the road or the $20 million company. I think customer centricity is important for everyone if you want to grow and keep your customers.
Wow, I think there's so much in there. Let's to try and unpack in there as well. So, I mean, one thing you said there was when the makers used to think about such and such or so and so, you're almost personalising those things, right?
Yeah.
Do you think there's a risk that decision makers just think of customers as data points?
Yeah, and I think that's really got worse the last couple of years. With big data, AI, big data was the buzzword a few years ago. Now we hear a lot about AI, etc. Synthetic audiences, But I think there's a danger we're going to lose the humanness behind all this, and the people that are our customers, or the people behind the customers. And I like to bring that human element into it and bring them to life and actually remind people that they are people.
People are people. And I mean, so how do we go about doing that? Let's start there.
I think there's two things. Obviously, there's a place for data. There's a place for, all that, behavioural learnings that we can gain from analysing big data, etc. But I think when we can tell human stories alongside that, it makes the data more memorable. And what that data was saying much more memorable when you can see it applied to a real person. So I personally, within our team, we will use case studies. I will get stakeholders to talk to customers direct on a particular topic, just so they can actually hear it from the horse's mouth, not just from, the stats that the data is telling us. And just tell, the human stories behind the data is how I sort of try to do that.
That's great. I mean, telling stories, essentially, making it human.
Telling stories is, as a researcher is key.
Yeah, I mean, as a researcher, let's take that, because you also introduced there the idea of stakeholders talking directly to customers, which, as a researcher, we might sit here and sort of recoil from, because as a researcher, it's got to have process, it's got to have structure, methodology, accuracy, robustness, all these things that we were taught. Statistical, valid, all of those things. How do you square those two things up? The idea of letting someone talk directly versus doing it the proper way.
Yeah. Letting go of control. Us researchers, we like to have all the control, don't we? But for me, I found when I work with stakeholders and they get to do some of that direct conversation, it really lands so much more impactfully, rather than me just being like the gatekeeper of all of the people and just relaying it back to them. I think there's a couple of things. So sometimes I think as researchers we get so hung up on the proper way of doing things, which obviously is important. We don't want to give data that's wrong or what have you, but we can relinquish a little bit of that control. So one thing that I've done internally that we've launched is we do customer connect sessions, and it's a bit like speed dating without the romance, is what I say to people internally. So it's a chance for people to talk to customers directly in a very informal way. So I give them a little bit of training. There's a bit of the quality in me loves to do that. So I'm like, this is how you might think about building rapport, etc. But they essentially do speed dating with customers. They'll get 15 minutes with a customer, and it's an informal conversation. Now, obviously, they come from different parts of the business. So I really want to ask a question about my new brochure, my new holiday brochure. Right, that's not the time to do this. We'll do that in a robust fashion, but I want you to be able to talk to customers, get to know them, etc. And that has landed really well internally. So it's a bit of both. It's, for those projects where we need the robustness, whatever, we'd do it the proper way. And it might be that we invite them to do a couple themselves after I know that I've done a bulk of 10 to 15 depth interviews myself. Right. They can then have the opportunity to ask questions, what have you. Or you can do something that's like outside of a project. And as I said, the speed connections is what we've done to give people that opportunity to connect with customers in a personal basis.
And you said that it's landed well.
Yeah.
What do you think about that is making it land well?
I think it's the humanness. So many people have stories to tell. And when you talk to someone on a one-to-one basis, even can be on the driest of subjects. I'll never forget, I've done previous role to where I am now on cooking potatoes. But you really, people have stories to tell, and even what might feel like the most mundane subjects can really come to life when you hear to someone telling you about their experience and what have you. So I think that's what brings it to life, especially when we're living in this era of digital AI data. Actually, that personal side to it and that very human can really bring it to life for people, and they appreciate that.
Okay, that's really interesting to hear. Just going to go back to something you said right at the beginning about customer centricity, and it's important, and how businesses can easily say that it's important. So a statistic we use often is about 3/4 of CMOs say it's critical to their business, and yet only about 14% would say that they are achieving that as a business. What is it in your mind, do you think, from your experience, from what you've seen, that creates that gap? What's stopping it going from we say it's important to we do it?
From my experience, I think some of it is the investment it sometimes requires, the time, not just investment from money side, but financially, but the time it takes as well. And I think sometimes there's, what the customer's actually going to say might not be what people really want to hear, and might not fit with the direction that a business is going in. I think that can be challenging sometimes, and it can, really test people's assumptions when they think they know a customer, and actually what they're hearing is very different. So I think that can cause the gap sometimes. And I think sometimes it's a bit of a tick box. Lots of people are saying it. Yes, we do. We are customer centric. We have this tracker in place. We ask customer satisfaction, but to me, that is not what customer centricity is about. So
customer centricity, let's characterise that a bit more, zoom in on it. What's the difference between that sort of what customer centricity really is versus what it might feel like it is, that idea that it's a tracker or data point?
Yeah. For me, what it feels like it really is you're building understanding of customers beyond just their interaction with you as a customer. Mm-hmm. So beyond the point that they have chosen to buy your product or your service, that you understand them as people. But also when you're making decisions within the business, you are thinking how, do I need to get customer feedback on this? Where and how, what customer feedback have I got or should I have? And also you start to encourage people to think in the mentality of a customer, which can be hard to do. which is why sometimes tactics like, actually, let's get a couple of customers in to this and, use them as like a steering group and get them into the boardroom to have some of those conversations so you can hear that perspective directly. But trying to embed understanding the customer throughout the business from the top to when we're making decisions on, marketing, creative or what have you.
Okay. So, the difference, I guess, from surface level,
to
human sort of depth, story side, the human side of it. Can you give us any examples where you've seen customer insight be used to influence decisions, change something in a business?
I've worked in research a long time, so there's a few. I think one thing that is particular with Saga at the moment is the shift that is happening in terms of, so we service only the over 50s, and we know that market very well, but there is a shift coming. And I know there's a lot of debate at the moment around using generational, bands, etc. But I do think it can be useful sometimes just to have a broad understanding. Obviously, there's nuances within, generations, but having that sort of broad understanding. And there is a shift coming whereby, the core of the Saga market at the moment has been made up by boomers. But actually, in the next 5 to 10 years, the oldest millennials are going to be turning 50, which sounds crazy when I say it, because as a much younger research, it's always about, those young millennials, and now they're going to be coming of age. But I do think really helping where it's made a difference with our strategy is thinking, okay, who are going to be the Saga customers in 5 to 10 years' time? Actually, these are going to be people that have grown up digitally, that had social media in their 20s, that look and feel very different to potentially how the boomers are now, and how is that going to affect and change us as a business. I think one example with that is retirement and what retirement looks like for people as they get older. For the boomers, you typically retired in your early 50s, final salary pensions, etc. And now what we're seeing is, a lot of people probably aren't going to retire. They're going to still be having to work to some degree part-time. We see people now in their 50s having career changes. So that understanding, not just of our customer now, but who our customer is going to be in the future, has really helped informed strategy going forward.
And again, back to the human side,
yeah,
I guess, in there, and the stories. And where do you think you are now as a business in terms of that customer centricity and that sort of telling the human story? Do you think you're there? Or do you think there's still a lot more?
I think there's always more. Yeah. I think there's always more to be done. There's always more to understand. I think the big part of the more we need to do at the moment is actually to broaden the reach of our insights, not necessarily do more of the work, but actually ensuring that our insights reach more people in the business, and that can be a challenge at times.
And how do you think about that at the moment? Is there a way that you think you need to change your approach maybe to do that? Is it just broadcasting it? Is it finding tactics to change the way you communicate it? Or is it looking at the target audience, if I call it that, and seeing what they need?
I think it's a bit of all of that, if I'm honest. I think it's thinking like a marketing team and how we market ourselves, which I don't think a lot of insights team, if I think about my career as a researcher, I've never really thought so much in that way until recently. So if I'm thinking as a marketer about how am I going to market my insights, as you just said there, knowing my target audience, understanding their needs and how I can, help them with those needs is really key, and that will differ across the business. I think, again, it comes back to a human touch, which you'll hear a lot from me. But I think sometimes it's helping the teams actually understand and take away from the insights what they're going to do next and making it actionable. We talk, actionable insights has been a buzzword for a long time too. But actually sitting down with them, doing things like workshops, helping them define the actions that they're going to take off the back of and what we've shared. And sometimes there's a bit of resistance to that because teams are like, well, I haven't got time to do these. But it's like, okay, what's one thing we could do, and what's one thing we could do and track and see if it's made a difference. So I think it's just thinking beyond the PowerPoints. That's my pet hate. Over the years, it's just the PowerPoint is not the end of the delivery. And I think that's where we need to sort of really push from our perspective in the business at the moment, is, taking it to the next level and working with teams to ensure that insight has longevity.
So true, so true. Longevity, I think we always underestimate how important that is, and how you build that. I think it's a different mind shift again in how do you increase the lifespan of an insight, I guess.
Yeah.
Where do you think the challenges are then for insight teams in the future?
I think AI is going to... I'm probably sick of hearing about AI.
Every
conference, I think AI can be a challenge, but it can be really exciting for us as researchers as well. I think the challenge is going to be is that people try to do it themselves more. And I don't know if everyone's seen the researcher function, the analyst function that's now in chat. GTP, just upload your data, get them to do the work for you. But a lot of the time people, non-researchers, don't know the right prompts to ask. What are they actually looking for? How's that, where's that data come from? Is it reliable? And I think there's a danger for us as researchers that other people think they can easily do our jobs using AI, and our jobs get devalued. But I think on the positive of that, for us as researchers, they are tools that we can use to work more productively as well.
Yeah, I think nicely summed up. What do you think that means for skill sets? You've talked about marketing, and there you touched on skills, actually. You touched on a different way of thinking as a marketer than you have done previously as a researcher.
Yeah.
But also they're talking about AI in the future. In that, what do you think the skill set needs to be for insight people in the future?
I think the skill set will be the human dynamic, the communication skills, and being able to articulate and share. You might have used AI to help you get to those findings, but it's understanding what does this mean for someone, and interpreting them and sharing them out. So I think communication skills are going to be massively important for researchers going forward, and thinking more as how am I going to market these insights and share them, content creation.
Which also touches on something you mentioned before, which is PowerPoint. And you share my same hatred of PowerPoint, despite the fact we produce a lot of PowerPoints. I have that constant challenge in workshops that we do in our Customer Salience masterclasses. Start with that point about challenge. Yeah. So why do we still do them? Why do we do them in a world which is largely remote or hybrid? Why are they still appropriate? Have we challenged that same notion? So thinking about being a marketer, thinking about how we get insight to reach more parts of the organization, all the things we've talked about, and our shared distrust, let's call it, of PowerPoint. What are the things that you think matter going forward, or that you are doing, or that you are experimenting with?
I hate PowerPoints, but I'm still doing PowerPoints. I think if you've worked in research for a lot, I cannot even put a number to how many PowerPoints that I have written. I think things that I'm trying to do internally is, the PowerPoint can be a useful tool just for quickly sharing, what you want to share, the content. But I think where we as researchers sometimes, especially if you've worked agency side, this can happen quite frequently, is that PowerPoint is like the dead end. You don't know what happens after that. So as I touched on earlier, trying to think about, the PowerPoint is one tool, but actually how can we make this more engaging? It's not just PowerPoint, it's about what it means. So incorporating those PowerPoints into workshops, etc. Also, things such as it's not just the story the PowerPoint says, but it's how it's told as us as storytellers, as the researchers, which presentation skills are a thing in there, to build in your own right. And not every researcher wants to sort of do that. But I have found if you can build good presentation skills, the PowerPoint is just your means to telling a story. And it's there as an aid. And actually, once you've built that skill set, you don't have to have complicated PowerPoints. You know, I've seen some horrendous PowerPoints in my time with tons of data on. They can just aid you visually to tell the story that you want to share. But I do think, you know, things like podcasts internally, you know, sharing your insights in different ways. I do a little newsletter, which is once a month, and it is really short. And we try to keep it sort of quite social media-esque. So it doesn't, no one wants to read a 100-page PowerPoint, which I've seen in my lifetime, or, you know, realms of like A4. You know, people don't really want to read that in their day-to-day jobs if you're just trying to share some quick insights with them. So, yeah. And also, as I've mentioned with talking to customers, if you can wrap up a project with a stakeholder talking to a few select customers who you feel represent really well, the sort of bigger cohort and the story you're telling about them, that can actually really bring it to life as well. They tell the story for you. Yes.
Do you think that sort of element, going back to that stakeholder connection directly with the customer, especially at the end of a project, do you think that helps socialise and makes the insight reach a wider audience?
I do, yeah. Well, I think it helps socialise in terms of, you know, I have people here, oh, I heard so-and-so spoke to these customers. Oh, I would like to speak to these customers. And it's like, okay, but I think it makes it more memorable and actually more real. And again, it comes through to that longevity of the insight sort of going forward. They remember that project more because they spoke to X and X. And they remember the people more than just the data on its own.
They lived it in some way, I guess.
Yeah.
Yes, it's more memorable, not necessarily that. I guess that might mean they talk to more people about it, but it's the memorability.
It's the memorability, yeah.
Yeah. And how important do you think memorability is for us then?
I think it's really important. At a time where I'm seeing insight teams have their resources squeezed, we can't constantly be doing new all the time. We need to just make sure that the insights that we do have are high quality insights and that they have, as I said, I've said it a few times, but that longevity to them so people remember them. They can, when they think back, I can remember that customer and what they said and what have you. So, I think it's important.
Thinking about an organisation, the reach of insight in an organisation. We talked before about marketing, thinking like a marketer, and touched on the idea of target audiences.
Yeah.
Are you doing anything to try and understand the organisational needs of insight and trying to build that understanding of that target audience? Yeah.
So there's so many different sort of target audiences. So we will have, the board, the level of detail that they want and what they need is very different to someone who is in, an ops director of contact centre and who wants to understand. So I think we do proactively do our best to try and do and understand the differences. I'll be honest, the challenge we have as a very small team as we are at the moment, to tailor all your outputs to different audience types is best practice, but it can be challenging to do at the same time.
I can imagine it would be. So if there's one thing, out of all the things that we've talked about today, if there's one thing that you would like our listeners to take away from today, what do you think that might be? How would you sum that up?
Can I say two things?
Oh, go on then.
So the first one is keep it human.
Okay, of course.
Keep it human as much as you can, and let if you are in a business where it's very customer facing and that's, what you work on, like, use your customers to do some of the work for you, to tell their stories, so to bring it all to life. And the second thing is think like, it's not just a marketer, but learn from content creators. What are they doing? What can we steal from them? Could you create, I've done this before, I've used Instagram feeds and said to people, these are the type of people that are buying this product. I have curated an Instagram feed for you, and you can see what they're doing and etc. So I think, think a bit more like a content creator. You know, how can you share your content in fun, interesting ways that go beyond the PowerPoint?
I love that, because I thought you were going to say think like a marketer, and you didn't. You went to the content creator. I did. I thought you were going to go marketer then. But you think content creation is more important than...
I think content creation, is more important.
It's more important
because that's a tricky question.
Because it's about influence, or...
I think it's about influence. It's about reaching building the biggest reach that you can.
Yeah.
And I think when we think content creation, it's, for me, when I think of it, it's digesting these big sort of insight projects that I have into easy to access, digestible content. I think like a content creator on Instagram or something. What's the key thing they're going to share on their story?
Yes.
And thinking in that way.
Because their key skill is that translation of nuggets, of bits, sort of chunked down discrete bits rather than one big book or story. Yeah. Which I think is a great way to end what has been a fantastic discussion. Thank you, Ellie, for that. And that just remains to say thank you to you, the audience, for tuning in too. We may have run out of time today, but I'll be back next month with another guest to talk about more inspiring stories about how to embed customer insight and customer salience in your organization. Until then, I've been your host, Paul Hudson, and this has been MRX Lab.